Hello, everybody. And today we are doing a Dying Light 2 character tier list. And originally, I was going to do it off of character development, but then I realized in this game, the character development isn't really that good. Like Aiden, for example, the whole game, he's kind of just like has one objective, finding his sister, and nothing really sways off, and there's no real character development. By the way, spoiler warning is in place right now. From here on out, there are spoilers a little bit, but I'm instead going to rank them of how powerful they are or how important, more of how important they are to the story, because I think it is an easier ranking, especially with like a multitude of characters we don't really get to know that much about. It wouldn't be fair for a lot of these characters here. And here we go. For importance to the story, Aiden, he obviously has to be an S tier. He is the main character. The entire story is centered around him, so he does have to be an S tier if anyone is. He is the most important character in this story, alongside one other person who's probably equally important, maybe a little more, maybe a little less important. Let's continue on. I actually don't recognize this guy. Is this, that's the dude who's the... Can't think of his name right now. We'll come back to him. I'm pretty sure it starts with C. Continue on to this dude. I can't remember his name either. It's Sophia's little brother. This dude, he's like okay importance to the story. His main importance is for you to gain Sophie's trust by finding him, and he kind of works as like coordinating higher ranked member of the survivors. He's not like super important. He could be there. He could be a character or not a character. If he was removed from the game entirely, it wouldn't be super important. It wouldn't really change the narrative of the game at all. He's kind of there. He annoys you at first, and you kind of start to like him a little later on. He's kind of a suspect of General Lucas's murder, but he doesn't really do anything to the story. If he was removed, it wouldn't completely change the story or anything. Then I actually don't recognize this guy right here. I don't know who that is. I have to come back to him. And then Aitor here, his importance to the story is definitely higher. I don't know if it's quite A tier. I wouldn't say A tier. I'll give him B tier just because he doesn't particularly do too much. Like, he's kind of the reason that the gates were closed down, but at the same time, he kind of took mercy on you. Like the other lady who was there interviewing you, or that found you when you were trying to get into this main city, to the central loop. He was more of the good cop, and you kind of worked with him, kind of got to be comfortable with the PKs. So he was important for kind of getting into that role, but he didn't do anything majorly drastic for the story, and his death is like optional. He's not super necessary, but he is more important than this dude, because if he wasn't around, you might not have made it out of the PK interrogation room, or you might have ended up being a prisoner or lynched or killed or whatnot as a suspect. So he's like probably high B tier in terms of importance. And we have, who is that? Is that Frank? That's okay. Yeah, that's Frank. Yeah, and kind of a B tier in terms of importance. I could maybe give him A tier. I might give him A tier actually. Yeah, because he's like a really big intel guy, former Night Runner, and the Night Runners are really important for going up against Waltz, and he does also one of the people you can give the radio tower. And he gives you intel that is very important for finding Waltz and for the main story. So he is very important, because without Frank and or Jack Matt, you wouldn't be able to complete or continue the story and find Waltz or the general. So Jack Matt, I'm going to rank here too. He deserves the exact same tier, because they're basically the same character, but on the survivor side or the PK side. So both A tier in terms of importance, in my opinion. And continue on. Hakone? Hakone is pretty important, because without him, you would have died. You would have got killed in the lynched in the city. You wouldn't have had a biomarker. And as it turns out, as you figure out later in the story, spoilers, of course, he actually was working with Waltz. But if you choose to spare him, he's actually not a bad guy. It's just he was doing something bad, and you learn that his intentions are really good, or were actually good, I should say. I'm tempted to put him in S tier, between A and S tier, because I don't think he stacks up with another character that I think belongs up here. I'm going to put him in A tier for now. just because he is very important for the story, but probably the most important in A tier, but he's not completely necessary for the story. Continuing on, Juan guy, B tier. Like, he is important. He does give you some missions you need to do, and you do need to kind of become friends with him because he supplies Bob, the PKs in both organizations, especially like the UV lamp mission. I don't know if he supplies all the UV lamps. I highly doubt it. But if he didn't have UV lamps, everyone would be dead. But he's not super important. I think that he's just more a flamboyant character, kind of takes away from the seriousness. Kind of adds a little bit of humor to the game. Not super important. Like, if he was removed, I think the campaign would have gone roughly the same. So I think like B tier, like he's not an essential character like these people up here are. So B tier. We got Lawan. Lawan deserves A tier. She's a very important character. I don't know. I wouldn't say she's more important than Frank, but she acts as kind of a slight love interest at the start, and a character that does. She ends up changing She ends up in some major decisions in the game, which can, I assume change your ending. Well, they definitely do change your ending. I know for a fact they can. Definitely a very important character. I don't think she quite gets S tier, but I'd say she's of the exact same importance as Hakan is, or Hakon, maybe a little more. So yeah, definitely an A tier. And Sophie, I'd give her high B tier, low A tier. She is the leader of like the survivors in the bazaar, so she is pretty important. She's not, again, like I'd say she's probably A tier importance because she's in this kind of fight back against the PKs, but she doesn't really do much herself. She's just kind of the head of security and she knows a lot. She has a lot of intel, but she doesn't do anything that's super important for the story. But she is survivor side. I'm pretty sure this is the guy who is the head of the bazaar. That's who it looks like. That's who I'm gonna assume it is. But I'll maybe my memory will jog. I'll keep him down here for a minute. And he's kind of more like on the PK side, and she's more on the survivor side. So she is an important character, but not to the same level as like Luan or Hakone, I wouldn't say. But she's definitely high B tier, maybe low A tier. It's definitely negotiable. And then we have, looks like Aiden's sister here, or Aiden's in quotations sister. She's definitely S tier. She is the main focus, one of the main focuses of the entire game. So she is definitely S tier. She is the whole reason Aiden is going through all of this. A pilgrim coming in here, solving everybody's problems and whatnot, doing everything he can to find out about his sister. And like this entire game never would have happened if it wasn't for his sister. He wasn't trying to find her. So yeah, she's definitely S tier. Like the most important character aside from the main character and one other character, the villain, is remaining. Then we have what is this dude's name? Starts with an R, I'm pretty sure, but he's can't think of his name, but he goes with you in the tower. He's the PK, and he's the one who ends up dying because of the bloater explosion. I do like this character. He's pretty cool, but he's not that important to the story because he goes in and out really quick. His death was kind of sad. It was pretty unfortunate. It felt like when he just died, it was supposed to be like motivation to climb the tower, but you're going to climb it anyways. It was like, don't give up. He didn't die for nothing, And that just feels so like unnecessary. His death didn't need to happen, but it did add to the kind of like emotion to finally climbing the tower, I guess. But in terms of character importance, he wasn't really that important. His death was more impactful than his life, sadly. Yeah, then this lady, she's a scientist. Yeah, another death that was really sad. She was, again, high B tier of importance, right about Sophia's level, I'd say. She was in the facility where you were experimenting on as a child, and she was not like, she isn't like replaceable really. If she wasn't in the game, you never would have found out what you found out. And if she didn't come around, she's a huge source of intel. So I'm actually debating putting her in A tier. I think she's like right on the border. Yeah, I'll give her A tier because without her in this game, you probably never would have been able to complete it. And I think that's kind of the bar of like draws the line for A. Like the line in the sand is that if she wasn't there, the game would not be possible to complete, or you would have like kind of been stopped in your tracks without them. And so she is definitely one of those characters, and she's like what allowed you to get into the observatory, um, and all of that. So yeah, definitely very high importance character. Then who is this? I don't recognize who that is. I can't think right now. So we're just gonna skip past him. And then Walt's obviously S tier. He's the main antagonist of the entire story. And I'm not even gonna spoil the ending. I know I said there was spoilers, but you find out like his intentions are still objectively terrible. Kind of reminds me of Attack on Titan in a way. To save the few, he's willing to sacrifice the many. And his objectively he's wrong, but if you were in his shoes, you may make the same decision. So I think that when you kind of learn about him, like it definitely changes the narrative of the story, and it was a big plot twist. It did shock me a little bit, but I was kind of expecting it once we got to the facility, um, and got to the city. I kind of started suspecting it actually, um, uh, especially after like how he was kind of shocked when he found out that you were Aiden in specific. I started having a feeling that I didn't predict it exactly the way it went out, but with him, I'm not gonna spoil it. Again, I said it, there's spoiler warning, but I do recommend playing through the game if you haven't seen it, or watching a playthrough of the ending, because it is a very, very good plot twist. And then coming back down here, I don't recognize who this is, honestly. I'm trying to think, but I just can't. I don't know who that is. This dude, I don't know who this dude is either. He looks like, oh, I know who this guy is right here. This is the Commander Williams, the Butcher, isn't it? I think that's who that is. The Butcher, he is an A tier importance. He's a very key character in the story. He was the one who kind of stopped the missiles from getting launched, contrary to what a lot of people believed. In the story, of course. Without him, the missiles would have been launched. There would have been no Villador. But at the same time, he is like, if he didn't exist, this story would have been like not possible to continue. And spoiler warning right here. He isn't actually as much of a villain as you might think. And it was Jackman who tried to kill Frank, not this man. So, like, he's objectively actually a pretty good character. And very important so as well. Maybe the most important in A tier. Because if Aiden didn't come along, I think honestly I might give him S tier just because he is such an important character in the story, so pivotal that if he wasn't here to stop the missiles from launching, that there would have been no Villador for Aiden to even go to and look for his sister. It all would have been wiped off the map, and only pilgrims would have been left. But yeah, so that concludes the tier list. I don't know who these two people are. I'm probably just blacking right now, and editing this video, I'll realize and be pretty embarrassed. But that's all right. So, wraps it up. Peace out.